Parents on Reddit, what was your "I raised an idiot" moment? I used to tell my kids not to take off their shoes and socks in the car, especially on short trips. Just leave them on so that we don't have to spend 5 minutes finding and putting them back on before we run into the store. Imagine a single dad with 2 young kids running around the car trying to re-shoe my children in the grocery store parking lot in the middle of an Arizona summer. Yuck. One day we went to the store and my daughter was missing her shoe. It was nowhere to be found. Daddy, I didn't want you to be mad that my shoe was off, so I threw it out the window. Made sense to a 5-year-old, I guess. Thank you. You have answered my question when I see a single shoe on the side of the road. When I asked my 14-year-old if she could please bring me a piece of cake, she cut it, forgot why, then ate it. It was a power move. She was tired of you asking her to perform trivial tasks for you, so she ate the cake to signal the start of the revolution. I would actually be proud if she had put that much thought into it. My dad's moment was when I made him drive around with me because my car had been making a thunk noise every time I made a turn. After 15 minutes he announced it was the baseball bat in my trunk rolling around. Edit. My revenge 20 years later was helping him figure out the rattle in his car. It was his sunglasses he put in his built-in sunglass holder. When one of my daughters tries to insult the other by telling her how ugly she is. They're identical twins. I'm an identical twin and I used to do this all the time. I may be good at math, but I sure am not good at life. When the Peter Pan peanut butter recall happened 10 to 12 years ago or so due to salmonella, my then 15-year-old daughter came in from school and as she was walking past the living room TV was on, she stopped and watched the news report about the salmonella outbreak. She got this aha lightbulb moment and said, "Oh, now I get it. It's about peanut butter." All day at school I kept hearing Peter Pan was killing people around the country and I thought he had turned bad or something and was now a villain. I just stared at her waiting for her to say she was joking and didn't really think Peter Pan was real. But no, she just went upstairs to her room like we just had a normal conversation about normal, everyday events. Someone I knew in high school thought genocide was killing out of generosity. The whole class had a great laugh when she proudly said it as an answer to a question. Daughter calls me, there is a cop behind me with his lights on. What should I do? When my son was 11 years old, he confidently informed me he was pretty sure he knew everything there was to know, because he tried to think of something that he didn't know, and couldn't think of anything. I thought it was only teenagers who knew everything. He must be smart. He's ahead of schedule. Source. Was teenager. Definitely knew everything. When my youngest son, who was 10 at the time, was getting his ears checked at the pediatrician and they found a foreign object in his left ear. Said object was a dead housefly. Because he thought sticking a fly in his ear would give him flying powers, he had caught it and shoved it in there alive about a week prior. He knew there was a frozen pizza in the garage but couldn't find it. Didn't even think to check the freezer. Where did he look then? The garage. I like to imagine he simply stepped into the garage, looked around, couldn't see the frozen pizza in his immediate line of vision, and then went back into the house. This is definitely how looking for something works at our house. When my son was disappointed by ed class, he thought they were going to learn some moves. I had ed in 6th grade. A friend who was in 5th asked me if they paired up the girls and boys for the practical part of the lesson. The only time I'd want to do a practical. And another group project where you end up doing all the work. I'm the idiot kid. But when I was about 3, after preparing dinner, my mom would leave me alone in the kitchen. After I finished, I would search for some M&Ms to nibble at, knowing I wasn't allowed. Every time after I finished, I would go over to my mom and ask her, "Did you hear me eating M&Ms in the kitchen?" She would always reply yes, and I would always get so frustrated, because every time I tried to be as stealthy as possible. I never realized what blew my cover until I grew older. When I was little and my mom would come in to check on me sleeping before she went to bed, I would pretend to be asleep to see if I could fool her. It never worked and she'd say, "I know you're awake," and I would be like, "How?" and be really disappointed. I think I was a teenager when I remembered this and realized that she was probably just saying that every time, and I would only hear it if I was actually awake. My 14-year-old soon went into a dressing room to try on 5 pairs of pants. After waiting 15 minutes and yelling twice into the men's dressing room to see if was okay, he admitted he could find the shorts he had worn in. He gave me 3 pairs of the pants and still couldn't find them. I finally had to go into the stall to look. They were balled up in the leg of one of the pair of pants. It was extremely noticeable. He swore he took his shorts off before trying on any of the pants so he didn't think to look in them. I was speechless. He's in the gifted and talented program in our school district. I understand him. Parents just magically find things. I had my sister text my mom that she forgot her phone at home. This happens a lot actually. One day I was on the phone with my brother and talked so long that I forgot I was on the phone. I started looking for it all over the apartment while bitching to my brother that I couldn't find it. He let me do this for a good 15 minutes. Not my story but my granddad's from a few decades ago. One day when my uncle was about 10, he heard from somewhere that babies float, and for whatever reason this really interested him. Like 3 days later, my granddad was reading the newspaper in their living room and he hears my uncle yelling out, "Dad, Dad, Dad," from the backyard. My granddad walks out and sees my uncle standing right beside the pool, holding my aunt who was about 1 year old at the time and was also in her crib about 15 minutes before. The thought of my 10-year-old uncle picking his baby sister out of her crib to do this cracks my family up. Immediately my uncle then shouts, "Dad, did you know babies float?" and proceeds to toss my 1-year-old aunt into the swimming pool. My aunt started to sink and my granddad had to sprint over to the pool and jump in before she drowned. That day, my uncle learned that babies do not float. Good thing he called his dad over first. I'm the idiot. I registered for college and spelled my middle name wrong, but didn't notice for 4 years since they always abbreviated to my initial. I was showing my parents my diploma before walking on graduation day and my mom just stared at me like I was special. Bonus points, I actually thought that was how it was spelled. Since a bunch of people are asking me what my middle name is, I'm not really comfortable posting PII here. But basically it's an ethnic middle name spelled phonetically, which wasn't super obvious to me. I also never wrote it in English. But I should have just looked at my driver's license, so still my fault. Don't worry, I couldn't spell my middle name until high school. I never actually had to use it before then. My son still asks me how to spell his middle name. He graduated from college last year with honors. How hard can it be to remember Rotextizedunkshakulnirurtik? It's pronounced Derek, so I understand the confusion. Not a parent, but when I was 14 I thought the smell of gasoline was the same smell as natural gas, so I called up the gas department to check it out. They said it smelled like gasoline, not natural gas, and that's where I knew I was stupid. However, they checked out the house anyways and there was a small gas leak in the basement that required a $3,000 replacement of a water boiler. Narrator: there was no leak. My brother couldn't remember the proper name for shoes, so he called them foot houses. Mum confirmed that day that at least one of her teenage children was a bit doughy up top. My cousin got busted with weed at school in her locker. When the cops came she said I wasn't going to smoke it, I just sell it facepalm. Entrepreneur right here. My gut feeling is telling me to invest. We need to leave. Sent him to put on socks. Waited more than enough. Go find him. He's in his room, wearing only underwear, playing with Legos. He can't remember what I sent him after. But the question was about your kids, not your husband. My 13-year-old son was sniffing really hard and moving his head all around the area he was standing in. Slightly concerned he had lost his mind, I asked him what he was doing. He told me, "I farted. I'm trying to smell it all up, so you don't have to smell it." He's a thoughtful idiot. A couple of weeks ago, our Chihuahua was horny and trying to bone his sister. I said to husband that the dog reminded me of a frustrated teen lad and he needs a cold shower. 20 minutes later, 17 years old walks in holding a distraught and dripping dog, wrapped in a towel. He'd overheard the conversation and literally put him in a cold shower. In March, in the UK, I swear to God raising this kid is like painting by numbers, and every so often he goes dramatically over the lines. Imagine you're a 17-year-old lad finding out your mum's Reddit username is Juicy Big Tits. Coolest parent of all time. Told my kid that carrots help you see in the dark. He then went into the basement with a carrot and started waving it around like a flashlight. Not my kid, but my aunt gave my mom this look when we found out my 12-year-old cousin thought Germany was on the other side of the world. As an Austrian, my friend African-American male has a son who asked him, "Do white people poop white poop? Because we brown people poop brown poop." I had an African-American buddy who was dating a white girl. First time they had she started laughing after he finished. He asked what's so funny. She said she didn't expect black guys to be white. Then she realized she's an idiot and laughed at herself.